Hey everyone, this is Kelly Cahoot and I'm here for Honeybee Stamps, and today's video is all about dies. Now this is a set of stamps and it's coordinating or matching dies, and there are all types of ways that you can use stamps and their coordinating dies together. Here I've used that cute little fox. I've stamped him and colored him and then used the coordinating dies to cut that out, as well as that cute little flower. Add some texture and dimension onto my card. I've done this little daisy, and then I've used the negative space, as you can kind of see there in this video, just to kind of pop that up off the surface of the card. Just another way to get some use out of all those dies. Now there are also shape dies. I'm not going to talk about these today, but I just wanted to give you a look. These are more to cut out paper and to layer cardstock, just to give a little interest and a color changes on the front of your cards. So all types of ways to use shape dies as well. You can see there the layers that I've cut out there on that little fox card with my pattern paper. So I am going to jump in and get started with the dies. So when you buy a stamps and then you purchase the coordinating dies, they come in a set that looks like this. They're connected by little pieces of metal, as you can see there, and you can either bend these apart, kind of wiggle that little metal piece back and forth and they kind of pop off, or you can get you a pair of metal snips or clippers. Now, these are super handy. You can find these at all kinds of craft stores and lots of online stores. I just hold that up right against that shape, or that flower as we're talking about here, and just kind of clip that apart. I'm trying to get it as close to the edge of the die as I can. So I'm just going to clip this one blossom out that I'm going to stamp and show you how I cut that out. You can see there I just rotate my fingers around and hold on to everything so the dies don't go flying across your craft room. Now when you get this cut out, you are going to have some little kind of sharp, sometimes metal pieces. I just try to clip that as close as I can and clip those away. Some people use a nail file and kind of brush over those rough edges. It's just whatever works best for you. I just try to clip it as close as possible. Now I have my die clipped out, I can go ahead and clip all the rest of the dies that go with that coordinating stamp set. So here again is that coordinating stamp set. Now to stamp these, you need some type of stamping device, either acrylic blocks that come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, or a stamping apparatus or helper, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to use the Mini Misty today. It has a little closing lid that makes it really easy to stamp. So I'm going to get started. I just got some regular, this is Neenah cardstock, but you can stamp and color on whatever type of cardstock that you like to. Now stamps have a stamping side that has all the detail, and then it also has a completely flat side. The completely flat side is the side that you're going to stick onto your acrylic block or into your stamping helper, such as a Misty. I'm going to ink that up with some really sharp black ink, and I'm going to hold that acrylic block down onto that paper. And I like to just hold it there just for a second, because that ink is going to seep into the paper and you're going to get a really nice crisp image. Now, especially if I'm using a stamping block. If you use the Misty, you can go back and stamp that again because you have the door to use. Now, as you can see there on that die, you do have a cutting blade. Now, this is not a sharp blade. You can run your fingers right over that, but that is just enough of an edge that is going to cut right around that flower and give you a perfect cut to use on your cards and projects. Now, to hold my die down, you can use some purple tape. That's like a low tack tape. You can use washi tape. You can use post-it notes or post-it tape. Today, I'm going to use a little bit of this purple tape, and it doesn't take a lot, so I'm just going to pinch off just a little bit and tear that into little pieces. And I am going to get my head right over the top of that die, and I'm going to make sure that all the edges are lined up all the way around. And you want to make sure that you have the same space on both sides and top and bottom. Now, this is my die machine. This is just a Vagabond, and now every machine is going to have different blocks. It's going to have different sandwich. That's kind of the nickname there for all the plates and how they line up and stack up. You're going to need to read the directions for your device, whether that is a hand cranked die machine or an electric machine like the Vagabond or the Gemini. So I have set that down into my sandwich. Remember, everyone is going to be different, and I've run that through. And now I'm just going to very gently, I'm going to pick up my little die cut and pull that out, set my excess paper aside, set my blocks there or my cutting sandwich aside. I don't need those anymore. And I'm going to very gently kind of pull back that purple tape and gently release the die cut from the die itself. So you can see there that gives you just the perfect die cut. You have the same white space all the way around. Now there is a right and wrong side to a die. So when you run that die cut through your machine, you are going to get a nice kind of rounded edge on that. That's the right side. When you flip it over, it's going to have a little bit of a rougher kind of straight edge. That would be the wrong side. So once you start cutting and you kind of get to know your dies and your stamps, you'll be able to easily tell which is the right side and the wrong side. Super cute. Okay, I'm going to go on. I have cut just one of those blossoms out, flowers out, and I have a little bit of what I'm going to call the negative space. That is the part, that paper, the square there on the bottom. I'm going to nestle that cut die right into that negative space, and it's really hard to see here on camera because it fits right into its spot just like a puzzle piece. Now I'm going to do this just kind of the old-fashioned way, I guess. I have my blossom there on a block, inking it up again. I'm going to stick my head right over the top of that because I want to line that up perfectly with that puzzle piece of a die cut that's stuck right into that square background. And again, that just helps keep everything in place, and it is stamped perfectly. So that's one way you can use your dies as well, is just to pre-cut it out and then stamp right onto your die cut. Now, some stamps are harder to line up, so I'm going to give you some ways that are easier to line those up. You can use your die itself and nestle that right into that die. Sometimes stems are hard to line up, balloon strings, anything that you can kind of manipulate, kind of the long straight pieces, they're a little harder to line up. So I put that right into the die. Made it like a puzzle piece. I pulled the die off the back and now it's right there on the acrylic block. I'm going to use the negative space again, which is that rectangle. I have my die cut out and I slipped it right into its spot. And I've inked up my stamp, and again I'm going to get my head right over the top of that. I want to make sure everything is lined up perfectly. I'm going to hold that ink down onto my paper to let it seep in for just a second. I'm going to pull that up very gently. I'm going to pull that die off of the stamp, and then there you go. I have the perfect stamp and perfect die cut image. So that's just one way to line up kind of those hard to line up stems and things. This is another way. So I have again my negative space, and it is in the MISTI this time. You can see there the door to my MISTI is open. I have that rectangle paper butted up against the bottom right hand corner. I'm going to line up that stamp right into that cut place. So I've already die cut that background piece. I have my stamp set into or puzzle pieced into that negative paper. I closed my door on my MISTI and picked it up. Now I'm going to put that die cut that I've already cut out of that negative piece of paper right back into its spot. I'm going to nestle that in there. It's hard to see because it's nestled and it fits in there tightly. I'm going to ink up my stamp and then make sure my paper is all nice and lined up, and then close the door to my MISTI. I'm going to use my fingers and make sure that ink is again pressed right into that paper, and then when I lift the door up there, I have the perfect stamped and die cut image again. That's just one more way to use your stamps and dies with the MISTI. Now for this time, I have stamped on my bottom sheet of paper, just stamped on a sheet of paper. I've used the negative space and I'm going to put that right over the top of that stamped image. And this is another way to line up your dies. I'm going to use a little bit of purple tape to hold that negative piece of paper right over the top, the one that I've laid over the top, and then I'm going to line my die up. I'm going to nestle it right into that open space that was cut out of the negative of that die in that piece of paper. Again, I'm going to use purple tape and hold the die down. Now I'm going to pick up both sheets of paper. I'm going to pick up the stamped sheet of paper that's on the very back, and then I'm going to pick up the piece that's on the top, and very carefully see those two pieces of paper there. There's my die, but look, it also will cut through the bottom piece of paper, and then I have a perfectly lined up stamped image. Okay, now not all dies are the same. They're not all open. So this little sweet little Acorn Sisters die is all closed in. So you cannot line it up by looking at it from over the top or anything. So what you have to do is cut this first. So you're going to cut it out of just whatever cardstock. You're going to make that negative there behind. You want that little puzzle kind of thing going on. So I've run that through my die machine. I'm going to very carefully pick up my die and my Acorn Sisters. And now I have the negative piece, which is the open back paper. And then I have the die that has the little girls all cut out. So the negative is in the MISTI, and the little girls are there in my right hand. Now I'm putting the negative down into my MISTI, and I'm going to use that to nestle the stamp into. So now I've got that stamp. Make sure that my paper is way down, tucked into that bottom right hand corner. Make sure that my stamp is all nestled into that negative sheet or negative piece of paper. I picked that up with the lid of my MISTI. You can see it there on the left. And I have tucked those little girls, the die cut, back into the negative piece of paper. I'm going to ink up my stamp, make sure everything is lined up, and then I'm just going to close the door carefully, kind of making sure everything's lined up. Press my fingers to make sure all that ink gets nicely pressed into the paper. And when I've done that, I'm going to carefully lift the lid. You can see there I have a great impression of those cute little girls, and it is perfectly lined up on that die cut. So that's what you can do if you have a die that you cannot see through, or it doesn't have the hole cut out where you can line it up on the outside. That is a way that you can do that. Also, some of these ways make it super easy to mass produce cards. So you just keep that negative space and you can do as many images as you need. Now, some dies and stamps are harder to line up than others. For example, these sunflowers. I love these sunflowers. So when I got these dies and stamps, I took a few minutes and I lined them up. The way that I like to line these up is I like to kind of find little landmarks on the stamps. There are three little petals there, and they line up to where they kind of make a deep V. And then there's also another longer petal there to the right that sticks out further than the others. On that deep V, I made a polka dot. And on the same place on the stamp, I made another dot. So I know how to line my stamp and my die up. So there's the deep V, and then over to the right is the petal that sticks out further. Now the littler stamp is the same way. So I'm going to show you how I do this. I'm going to put my polka dot that I have made there on my stamp. That's kind of a marker to help me know. There's another pink dot on the other stamp. You can see the deep V there. Okay, and I'm going to stamp these, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to line these up. So I'm going to just ink those up with my crisp black ink again. And again, I have both of my little dots at the top, so that lets me know where I need to place the dots from my dies. Peel that paper back and I have a great image, so I'm going to go ahead, and it's easier to see now because it's stamped out. You can see the deep V at the top, and then on the right side of that stamped image there are some petals that stick out further than the others. I'm going to use those as my guidelines. When I first received these stamps, that's what I did. I used those as the guidelines to mark little points on the stamp and the die. There's the V, and then there to the right is a petal that sticks out further than the rest. So I'm going to line that up just perfectly, make sure it's lined up all the way around. And I'm going to use that purple tape again just to hold those down. Again, I'm going to slip that little polka dot that I made there on the die into the deep V. I'm going around all the petals to make sure all the little points line up, making sure those match. And again, I'm going to use some purple tape and just hold that down. Now, when you first get these types of stamps, it's going to take you a couple of minutes just to make sure that you have the little points lined up and things like that. But once you make your dots and you've got everything lined up, it makes it easy peasy from then on. You just have to find those little focal points or the little guide points to line up your stamp to your die. Now, a little bit of my purple tape stuck onto my die, and I left this in the video so I could show you how easy it is just to peel up. I have a nice little craft knife. I'm very gently just scraping that, and that tape just peels right up. No problem. It didn't take the ink off or anything. So that just comes right off. And you can see what a perfect cutout image you get. Just taking a couple of minutes when you get those stamps in the mail to find those guide points, either a deep V in the petals or one that sticks out further than the other. Find those on both the stamp and the die, and then mark you some little polka dots. That helps every time. And then from then on, that set is super easy to use and line up. So I hope this has helped you guys today with the Honeybee Stamps dies, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.